Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining me this Friday evening. I'm really excited to introduce our first guest. So I'm first going to reveal her book, obviously. My Dad's Funnier Than Your Dad. And we'll zoom in a little bit or back up here. There we go. Growing up with Tim Conway in the funniest house in America. So I'm excited to welcome Kelly Conway to the show. Welcome, Kelly.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. We were just talking a little bit about weather right before we began. So I just want to welcome everybody. Hopefully everybody's staying warm or not so cold here, like we're over here on the East Coast. But it's always great to have somebody on the show who I'm a big fan of any type of biography or anything that pertains to people about their lives, learning about them, learning about their experiences. So I was like thrilled to see the book featured on Instagram, and that's how we kind of came to chat today.
You're so young to even know who my dad is. Like, it's amazing that you know who he is.
Well, so the first time that was actually going to be my first thing. I was going to say my introduction to your dad was Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy from SpongeBob SquarePants.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know it was your dad because I'd seen the Apple Dumpling Gang, and I'd seen the Carol Burnett show, but I didn't make a connection that it was him. So that was always so thrilling, like that he got to be in SpongeBob.
It's so funny because he, our grandparents know who he is, our parents, our aunts and uncles, would like ages down and down and down because he kind of kept it going for every generation. Like, I think the SpongeBob was probably the last generation. But then before that was the Dwarf, like the Dwarf on Golf when he was the videos that he was the little guy. So also he tried to keep everything so clean that you could watch it with your grandparents or a 3-year-old and nobody would be offended or nobody had to cover up anybody's ears or eyes. So I'm glad he did what he set out to do, honestly. Like, if you know who he is and even younger than you, then he's happy.
Well, and it's interesting because like I think I had the Apple Dumpling Gang on Laserdisc, so
really?
I'm like right in between of like that hitting of I started using VHS tapes, which I have some back here.
Yeah.
I don't have the Apple Dumpling Gang because I had that, but I don't have it anymore, which I feel bad. But they had like a special edition of like Walt Disney Presents, and then they'd have pictures of the film, the front and the back. And I always thought that was so cool because like that's how they'd advertise the live action films from like the 70s and 60s, like Billy Mills and Kurt Russell. So that was always fascinating. So, but and I wanted to start off. I hope you don't mind me starting off with this, because my sister and I were rewatching Glee, and I totally forgot your dad was on Glee, and I had listened to the late Naya Rivera's biography, and she mentions your dad. She says your dad was hilarious, so much fun to work with, but there was like some drama behind the scenes, and she mentioned that you were there. Was this the case? Like, do you remember this story? Or
I wasn't there. It was I had a stepsister. They probably said daughter. They probably said his daughter. She was my dad's stepdaughter. And I think she was there and my niece was there. But yeah, there was some kind of drama. My dad's specialty is not following any kind of a script. His specialty is doing what he wants to do, and it's always funnier. So I think he was kind of following what they wanted to do, but not really. And not that he can't memorize. He can memorize a book, in a couple of hours, but it's funnier the way he does it. So I think one of the stars of the show, should I say her name?
Yeah, go ahead.
Leah Michelle was upset that she said, she asked who this was, and they said, well, it's Tim Conway. And she said, well, I'm going to my dressing room, call me when he learns his lines. And so that was the drama.
Well, Naya didn't include that phrasing, but she said once that Leah had gone to the dressing room. They were just palling around for the rest of the shoot because they're having a good time.
They were having so much fun with my dad, and she didn't understand. Which I'll give it to her if she's that theatrical, like that's where she came from, and that's memorize each and every punctuation and every line and never change it. That's the way she does things, but. Yeah, it's not the way my dad does things. And usually they that's what they want out of him because that's what he does the best. So she just had a different style and a different way to perform, and it didn't match my dad's.
Because that story reminded me of what was in your book about when Harvey and Tim were doing a commercial, and can you tell us what the
Exactly.
director told them?
I was just gonna mention that too. That's so funny. I'm a wardrobe stylist, and that was actually, that contact commercial was the first job as a costume designer stylist that I ever did with my dad, and it just happened to be because the director that was hired to do that job, I worked with him a lot, so he just kind of went, "Hey, I'm doing a job with your dad." So anyway, I was the wardrobe stylist on it, and my dad and Harvey were it was for contact cold medicine, 30-second spot, got to do it fast, get all the information in. And they were so funny. They were hilarious. Everybody was laughing. But then the notes come from the ad agency going, could you ask them just to take it down a notch? It is a cold medicine, and it shouldn't be that funny. And so after a few of those, my dad went, "Then why did you hire us? Hire him, hire somebody else that isn't as funny." So, but those are the only two times I think that it's been a problem is Glee and the contact commercial.
Because I literally, when I was holding the book in my hand, I was like, do you know who you're dealing with? You know what I mean? Like,
I
you
know.
want that. Like, I would have been like, keep going, let's go.
I know. Well, and Leah Michelle, and then the ad agency, like they just didn't. They worked differently. I'll say that. I'll stay neutral and say they just worked it differently than what my dad and Harvey did.
Well, your dad, I didn't realize you guys had a huge family. 6 children, your mom, your dad, and what was such a joy to read about was the fun things your dad would do with you guys. Especially, my favorite thing was the movie theater, because my dad had a movie theater too, and we would do something just as similar as what you were explaining in your book. So, could you tell us about like the Wizard of Oz story?
He made it because there were so many of us. I think mostly he did it so it was to keep us quiet for a few minutes, or just to keep us in. It was hard to keep us entertained because I have 5 younger brothers. I'm the oldest, but there's 6 kids only in 8 years. So we were all kind of this like little at once, so it wasn't like there was an older one to take care of the younger ones. We were all just 8 years apart. So I think the point to all of it was he just did things, and he was fun, and everything he did was an event. It wasn't just, let's go swimming. He would have a swim meet and, invite all the kids over in the neighborhood, and he would use garden hoses to make lanes in the pool, and had a barbecue for the athletes after the swim meet, and trophies. And he was always entertaining. And like with that movie theater, it used to be that with the Wizard of Oz was only on once a year. And when, it would be build up for a month, like Wizard of Oz is on in 3 weeks, in 2 weeks it's on Friday. And then, it was a big deal because you couldn't just watch it anytime you want. So he blacked out all the windows in the living room, and because I think it was in the summer, so it was kind of dusk, kind of still light out. And he made popcorn. He colored brown paper bags with red and white stripes. He sold tickets to get into the theater, and he had the seats numbered and lined up like a theater, because we didn't have. I mean, I know a lot of people now. A lot of very wealthy people have movie theaters in their house, but this was just make it up as you go.
But that's the most fun, like when you can create something, and that really stimulates children's imaginations and having fun. You know what I mean?
Because we got that. My brothers and I all, my dad's, I think his biggest, besides obviously being funny, I think his biggest gift was being resourceful and, grabbing anything, like grabbing a garden hose and a thing. And I can make you a charm bracelet with, a sprinkler and a spatula. Like and so I think we all learned that from him, and it helps me a lot in my job, because being wardrobe, people think of things at the very, very last minute. And so you have to kind of scramble around and find stuff. So I think that's the biggest gift he gave us, or gave me.
And you being able to be on set sometimes to see the Carol Burnett show being created in front of your eyes. I love when you mentioned Bob Mackie, because I love his wardrobe was amazing, and you're watching Cher as well performing like in peak Cher, but Cher is Cher, so she's great in any age, any fabulous outfit she's wearing. But you're right in the middle of basically history, TV history, because it
Yeah.
takes a turn, because this is like before SNL.
Yeah,
And
and I didn't even, I mean, who, you don't know it when you're in it. You know, when in the mid 70s, I just
yeah.
knew I loved Cher, Sonny and Cher. And so I'd go, hey, I'm going to the bathroom, Mom. And, I'd slide away and go across and just stare at her. I wanted to be her. And you don't know, it's historic that you're watching. I just wanted to go look at her, and the clothes and the spark and the headdresses and the matching tops and bottoms and shoes, and oh my gosh, it was pretty amazing. And Three's Company was next door to them,
Yeah.
which was another cool thing. But you don't know at the time. It's just John. This man, I think his name is John Ritter. Yeah. Oh, he's so nice. He brought me in and showed everything, and so it was just people being nice, and we were very, very lucky. We had a really fun childhood, and still having fun actually.
Well, you would think that most nowadays they probably like send kids away from the set, but you guys got really lucky. You got to be able to go around. Like that's
Yeah,
the dream of being able to see things happen.
I think it was before, rules and IDs and age limits, or they did tell us though. And I figured out while I was writing the book, it just kind of dawned on me when I was writing the story about that, because my mom and dad would say, hey, Thursdays are going to be the day that you can come visit us, because Friday is a tape day, and they don't let anyone, because of insurance reasons, they don't let anyone under 16 or 18 into the studio. And at that time, we're like, oh, too bad. Okay. And we believed them. But now I'm thinking like, that's not true. I bet that's not true. I bet they just wanted a grown up night, and they didn't want a bunch of kids hanging around, which I understand, but we all fell for it.
Well, they have to be able to go out and celebrate, just like SNL has their usual typical big party at the end. I'm sure Carol Burnett started that.
Yeah, exactly. A rap party every Friday.
Can you tell me a little bit about your trip to London? Because I wanted to, I saw that you were mentioning the Muppets, and I was like, oh yeah, like peak time from the Muppets too. So what was it like about that trip when you went to London?
It was, oh my gosh. Well, I'd never been overseas. The furthest I had been was Canada. So for my high school graduation, my mom and dad let me go with Carol Burnett's daughter and her daughter, Erin, because Carol's doing the Muppet Show. And that was my graduation present. And I went with a friend of the family who became my dad ended up marrying, Charlene, because she was Carol's secretary. So Charlene and Carol and Erin and I all went to London. We got to fly on the Concorde, which was unbelievable.
Wow.
Again, I mean, I think at that time, because I had just turned 17 or 18, at that point you're like, okay, this is nice. Like, it's different. You start to realize like, okay, this is really special and cool. And I'm very fortunate. But in London, we got to go to Jim Henson's, the Muppet Shop, and watch them make the Muppets. And they let us make one. I still have it. I think it's in storage. I was
going to ask that. I was like, do you still have it?
Yeah, I still have it. I should, well, next time I come across it, I'll get a hold of you and show it to you. It was just a simple, like, cut a round circle out of a piece of foam and shape it and cut a mouth out and eyes and stuff. But they taught us how to make it. And I think that was, that led to the shoes that my dad used for the dwarf character. We had to make foam shoes that would come out off of his knees, because instead of digging 2 holes in the ground for that character, which it started off being, so he could stand in something, he would just be on his knees, and then these shoes would stick out from it. So it was the Jim Henson Muppet making that brought me to like, hey, we can make them. So I made the shoes with my dad, with the Velcro attached around and the shoe coming out of his knee. So that helped. That it all leads somewhere.
Well, Steve in the chat says, born in the mid-50s in McHale's Navy, I never missed a show.
Aw.
And that was again something I found out in your book was that's where your father met Ernest Borgnine, right?
Hmm.
So that's
Yeah,
where they met before SpongeBob.
they'd been friends. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they've been friends since he started McHale's Navy in 1962. And I was born that year. So he started work. I was born a few weeks later, and that was his first job. And I have pictures. There are pictures in the book. I'm sure there is a picture of Ernest Borgnine holding me. I mean, it's like,
It's
it was
so
like a little
cute.
football, but that was 1962. But that
Jeez.
was his first job.
And I found like towards the end of the book, you find that this is just for me telling the listeners, you find that Kelly is extremely patient because unfortunately, her and you and the family kind of had this issue, this situation. And as somebody who worked in a senior living home for 4 years, I
You
was
did.
understanding everything. Yeah, when you were writing
Wow.
about your father being sent from home to home to home, I'm like thinking this is the worst possible thing you could do to somebody,
I know,
especially
isn't
when they
it?
have issues.
Like, I mean, you don't want to, even if you just have a cold, you don't want to move from you don't want to move from your
Mhm.
bedroom to your living room.
No.
So can you imagine if you're not doing well or feeling well to be, a new set of faces and a new, a new routine and
Yeah.
new doctors and it was too much. And I was patient for a while. And then something happened where I had to pull the trigger and talk to some lawyers and which
Like
in the end, I don't.
I'm like so angry just when I was holding the book. I was
Oh
like,
my God.
"Oh," and I'm like, "I would not have your patience." I'm not, and you're coming in there, supporting your dad, and you're there all the time, and I'm like, "This is like the best daughter ever." You know what I
Oh,
mean? Because like you were really looking out for your dad, and your question is a question that any reader would have is like, why? Where did this start and stem? Do you think you'll ever know the answer as to
no,
why
I don't think
Charlene did what
so.
she did?
I don't think so. I don't know. I don't need it. I don't need the answer actually. If I were given the answer why she did it, I would take it. But I found in laying all these stories out and telling people about it and getting it out of my heart and my brain that it kind
Yeah.
of settled an anxiousness or a need to find out why. It it's mind-boggling to me because it's not my dad and I, he was my best pal. He knew where I was and I'm old. Like, I mean, up till when he got sick, I go up to the mountains a lot and ski. And if he knew, whenever I was traveling, call when you get there.
Yeah.
I'll be waiting up. And if I was traveling at night, he'd go, you know what? You're not driving to the mountains at night. You're staying here. We'll give you breakfast or leave at 5 in the morning if you want. But he's so protective, and he was my closest pal person in the world. And she knew that. That's what is upsetting, is if I were a, once every 5 years Father's Day kind of daughter, then I would understand the confusion. But she knew how close we were. So that's the disturbing part actually. But my dad knew. I don't know much. I don't know. I don't know if the sun's
It's
even gonna
so
come
weird.
up tomorrow. The sun may not come up tomorrow because of whatever's going on, but I know my dad loved me, and he knew that I
Yes.
loved him. So that's
Yes.
all that matters.
Because it reminded me because we had many families where there was a similar situation, and you could
Wow.
tell who was truly there for them because you could
Yeah.
see again how they reacted to their loved one. And you
Yeah.
and clearly all the caregivers that worked with you and your dad, especially Jason,
Hmm.
they would tell you they're like he's the happiest when you're here.
It's so
And that was like so good to hear and read.
that still kills me. Like, that breaks my heart, and it breaks my heart, but it melts it. Like, it just, to him to cry when I was leaving. Oh my God, you're gonna make me cry. And I have mascara on today. I haven't had mascara on in a month. Um, it was hard. It was tough. And like you say, that you have seen so many families that's happened to.
Yeah.
You wouldn't believe, I was told by the lawyers, they said that they opened a new division in their offices for only this problem of adult children of parents with either a step parent, stepfather, or stepmother, keeping them from their parent. It's a whole thing, and it's unbelievable how what they were telling me and how often it happens, and it's sad. It's disgusting because she knew.
Yeah, don't
So
you want your loved one to be happy and
yeah,
just live the rest of their life, regardless of if they're, a changed person due to, not having recollections or their memory, they're not really the
yeah,
same person. You still want them to be comfortable and happy. And
yeah.
yeah, again, that's why I was like, I don't understand where she's coming from with this. And obviously, I think you mentioned like the last time you even corresponded with her was at the funeral. Has she said anything to you about this book, or have you heard
No,
anything from her or her daughter?
I'm pretty sure they know there's a book. I mean, if you know there's a book, they must. If you found it, they must have found it. I'm pretty sure they know, but I haven't heard anything. I haven't heard anything. It's too
For the
bad because
better, maybe.
it could have been a lot different. And it should have been a lot different. No matter what our differences were, I tried hard to, we can't do this. The two women that my dad loved the most were his wife and his daughter. And of course my brothers, but dads and daughters have a special bond often.
Yes.
And a wife's relationship with a husband is not, if it was a controlling thing or a jealousy thing, it's a totally different relationship. It wasn't trying to, it was so misunderstood, and it's too bad. It's too bad.
Well, I want to remind our listeners, and I put the link in the show notes to the Amazon, so you can actually pick up a copy of the book. You really should, because Kelly tells these wonderful stories about growing up with her dad, and then obviously the story that we all read in TMZ and all the the news outlets. But I like to hear it from the horse's mouth, which is why I really wanted to talk to you today, because I'm
You're
like
so
reading this.
sweet. Oh gosh, you know the book so well.
Well, I was really riveted by it. Again, like I felt your pain, and I couldn't understand it. And the fact that also Jason, um I, the one thing that you mentioned was like Jason was getting his citizenship. This was his caregiver,
Yeah,
and he risked getting in trouble with that for whatever reason
yeah.
to help support you in the legal system. And I was like, this guy
He was
was like
unbelievable. I still talk to
amazing.
him. There are a couple caregivers that I still talk to. In fact, I'm going to have lunch with one of them in a couple weeks. And I'm trying to get Jason to come with us. His dedication and his commitment to my dad was unbelievable. And it was from my former stepmom, from Charlene, that she said, she threatened him. She said, if you go through with this, then who knows what's going to happen with your citizenship. And he went, you know what? I mean, he thought about it. And he said, in the end, I'm protecting, he called him Papa. I'm protecting my Papa. So
Yeah.
sweet.
And it's hard to find, especially with so much turnover and people come in and out of healthcare all the time. It's really hard
Mhm.
to find someone who truly is there to support.
Oh,
And that's why I was
totally.
like, thank God your dad, you are a wonderful support. And having a caregiver like that, that's an also like a very special bond too. I've seen it, and
Oh
because they're
yeah.
helping you with a lot of things that are very private that you've done all your life, and you can't help yourself and do that. And I think a lot of
Yeah.
people that doesn't even come to their mind when they think about the caregivers and what their work is. And it is about love and compassion. So,
It's caregivers and I never knew. I mean, you hear, and you hear from friends or parents or friends of friends, like what the caregivers, and people keep saying caretakers. I'm like, no, it's a caregiver. And how dedicated they are to their patients, and how they keep them their dignity by helping them do things that maybe they can't do. They are angels sent from heaven. Like they're it's unbelievable. And they don't get much time off. I mean, some of them are 12-hour shifts, and Jason was like a 24. He was there with my dad 24/7. I mean,
mm,
once in a while he would take a day to go see his parents or go do laundry, but they are unbelievable. And to have that, like you were saying, that familiar the only constant, taken away after he got fired was, I think that was damaging, sad.
Well, yeah, again, that throws the person for a loop because they're so
Yeah.
used to being cared in a certain way, doing certain tasks in a certain order during the day.
Right.
And that's why I was like, it's really tough to read, but it is a wonderful read. And I really do suggest it to our listeners to take a read
Thank
because,
you.
and you have wonderful pictures. Don't forget about those beautiful pictures, in the book. I was like, these are more than I've seen in any other biography. I was like, this is great.
I'm so fortunate. The publisher was so kind to let me put so many in, and that
Yes.
took a lot to get it from. I had thousands of photos to get it down to. I think there's over 110 or something.
Yes.
To get it down to that was hard. But we had, just my mom took a lot of pictures. My dad took lots of pictures, and photographers that were around. It wasn't social media then. There was actual film and photos, and so I'm so happy they let me put so many in. When I get a book, I go right to the middle. And sometimes I don't even read the book. I just go right to the middle, and then I put the book away.
The pictures of the people who are going to be mentioned in the book, because then I can okay, I have a face to the name, and it was great. Yeah. I was like, I know who this person is. I know who that person is. I was like, it was perfect, and I was like, I love that.
Thanks.
By the way, since you're a stylist, I had one more question because you worked with, and I'm going to say the last name wrong, but you worked with Bobby. You were Bobby's assistant.
Bobby Mannix.
Mannix.
She's an amazing woman. I accidentally met her. Not my uncle met her at a diner in Hollywood, and it came about that I went down to her office to see what she was doing, and she's like, "Who are you?" I went, "Well, remember we talked on the phone yesterday?" And she said, "Okay, as long as you're here, take this back to Macy's or Bloomingdale's." She did the movie Xanadu, which
I know, that's why I was like, oh, she did Xanadu.
Yeah.
I love it.
She designed. That was her idea of that kind of silk scarf skirt that was really popular for a while. In fact, I still have one. I kept one. That was her, and so I got to work under her for years, for 5 or 6 years, until I slowly started getting my own jobs. But I just talked to her the other day. I still talk to her all the time. She's like my in-town mom.
Oh,
awesome. She's amazing.
I was like, I was like, oh, that is so amazing. You get to work with somebody who has such a wonderful background, and then their experience, like working with them, that experience only helps you build onto your own career. And you've done so many different things too. Are you still working as a stylist now, or what have you been doing since COVID?
I just finished a Honda commercial yesterday. Actually, I finished this morning. I do Jack in the Box, fast food. I don't know. You guys don't have them back east, I don't think.
I don't think we have the Jack in the Box. No, sounds good.
But some fast food, lots of cars lately, because cars were not available kind of during the COVID thing. So now it's car mania, because now they're selling cars again. So I do less car commercials, but yeah, commercials are fun and fast. And if it's a hard or a terrible job that you don't love, then it's over in a couple of weeks. So I'm freelance, so I work all over the place.
Then you don't need to be, someplace for 3 months doing a film. So that's like the very great benefit of it.
That's a long time. That's a lot of have a nice weekend, and how was your weekend, of 3 months of that.
You're like,
I
already know you.
Yeah, exactly. It's too long for me. I'm a gypsy. I gotta move, gotta travel.
Well, Steve has a question. He says, what was your dad's favorite shows that he was involved in? Like, what did he talk very highly of?
His favorite for sure was the Carol Burnett Show. He, when they went to work, they had the best time. And we were even too young to realize it, and how fortunate he was to go to a job, and how great a job it was that he got to go play and, have fun with his friends all week. For sure, the Carol Burnett Show. And he loved all of the Apple Dumpling, all the Disney movies, the Apple Dumpling Gang. And he did a bunch of movies that he wrote too. So I'm going to say the Carol Burnett Show.
And Caitlin wants to know, hey girl, hey, what was the process of writing the book? Were there people that you've met along the way through this?
Yes, actually. When my dad passed away, it was overwhelming how many people got in touch with me that I didn't know that I have, and they got my address to send me physical cards or flowers they sent, cookies, or a gift from all over the world. I couldn't believe it. And it's still touching. Like, so yeah, there because of Instagram. That's how you heard about the book too, is uh, there's a friend that we've been keeping in touch since my dad passed away, and she was so kind, and she was really young too, like you. Like it blows me away that you guys, you know, the 20-year-olds know who my dad is. So she was and still is a friend, and she's become my not by blood but by the heart, my niece.
Aww.
This little one, yeah. She's even been out to visit LA, so
that's great. There you go.
Yeah, it's brought some really kind people because they just love my dad, and there's nothing but happiness, and it's so nice it takes a little bit of the sting off of him, you know, passing away and not being here, is to live it when people bring it up, you know, even when I go to work and I see these, you know, the same groups of people at work all the time, and you know, somebody will say, oh my gosh, I just saw the dentist sketch, or I just saw the elephant and the thing, and it makes me so happy because he makes them happy, and that's all he wanted, you know. I don't think he planned on his career going the way he did, honestly. Like,
yeah,
he would have been just as happy working at the hardware store in Chagrin Falls, outside of Cleveland, where he grew up. Maybe he would have owned it by now, but he would have been just as happy to be there, because I don't know, he wasn't an actor. He didn't go to acting school or comedy school, or he was just funny.
Well, with a lot of, we have so many different films about the making of, or the how this person came to be now, especially with being the Ricardos coming out.
Yeah, I
and
just saw that.
It was really good.
It's great. It's a great movie.
I love, like, when sometimes they do the TV specials of how a show came together. Like they did one for Three's Company and Gilligan's Island. Yeah. So my question is, I know Carol Burnett and Vicky are still around from the Carol Burnett show, but if they were to do something in that retrospective, showing how that show changed TV variety shows forever, who would you love to see play your dad, and who would you love to see play you?
Oh gosh. You could play me.
I'd love to. I'd be honored.
Okay, that's yours.
I just have too big of a nose, but I will work on it.
That's fine. Mine is too. That could be like in the 70s, when I was like, you know, 80s, 20s. To play my dad. Gosh.
Because he had a lot of big comedians who loved him. You could, because you were saying that all these people would come up to you. So
yeah, and they and people like Jim Carrey said once, like, he said to my dad, he said, I do what I do because of you and because of what you did. Like, there's people that got into the business because of watching my dad and Carol Burnett and Harvey and everybody. So there are plenty of people that could do it, I'm sure. I don't know, Jim Carrey, depending on how, you know, where it was placed and what year, but Jim Carrey's pretty awesome. He loved my dad. Oh my gosh.
I would love to see him do an honor to that.
Pardon?
I would love to see him do something where, like, it would honor your dad like that. That would be fantastic.
I'll start writing it. What time is it? Start writing it tonight.
Well, my dad's in the chat. He says, I think Tom Hanks could play Tim. Ooh.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Tom plays everybody, but I think that would be fun.
That's a good idea. And then it'd probably be different people, like 70s and then 90s and then 2000, you know. But yeah, that's a good one.
That's a good one, Dad.
I'll
Thanks.
Have to think about that. I would say, if John Ritter were alive, I would say he would be.
That's a good one.
He was so similar to my dad in their physical comedy, and Kevin Nealon too is really. He reminds me so much of my dad. It's just his timing and his conversation, his dry sense of humor, and the way he tells stories is so much like my dad.
That would be, I didn't even think of those two, but that would be really great. When you mentioned John Ritter in the book, I was like, oh my gosh, because both were hilarious. Probably the best, like you get that presence of them being so warm and present like a dad. And so, especially when John did his show before he passed away, and I'm like,
Yeah.
that's what I feel when I think about your dad or John or comedians that really have that warmth. Like, that they're very true and they just want to make you laugh and have fun. So that's why I really enjoyed this book. Again, it's My Dad's Funnier
Yeah.
Than Your Dad, and it's true. Although my dad might
Don't, no, your dad's listening. Your dad's
yeah, I know he
listening.
might type and say otherwise, but actually, I think my dad and your dad would have been best buddies because that's what my dad does his own shtick too because he
So
has his like own
fun.
infomercials about
Dads and
pinballs.
daughters.
Exactly. So, but again, the link to go and get the book is on Amazon. It's in the show notes below. Please get a copy.
thanks.
And Kelly, I think the only thing I'm sad about is that you couldn't like really officially do a book tour because I'd love for you to sign mine.
Well, where are you again? You're back east.
I'm back east, but hopefully we can get you on a book tour because I'm sure a lot of people would love to meet you in person and I'm sure a lot of people will be able to connect with you on what happened and how you were
Yeah.
just so graceful and sweet with everything that came at you because it was very difficult for you.
It was hard. And my brothers too. I think boys. Well, I'll say my brothers. Boys maybe. I think daughters and girls run into a fire like that. Like they run into that burning building to save their dad or their mom. But and my brothers were just as close with my dad. But boys are like, great, dad. He sounds like he's doing fine. I had to go. I think boys can't handle as much. I'll say not boys in general. I'll say my brothers couldn't handle as much as a girl can because
it's emotional. It's very emotional.
Yeah.
And when you grow up during a specific era, and I think it's still true to this day, it's like you're programmed to feel a certain way or not show your feelings. And
Exactly.
and that's why I love asking the questions I do. I love having people on like you that I do because emotionally, I get charged by the things that you write, the things that people sing and perform. And that's the connection that we make. And I think a lot of people get nervous and they're like, I don't want to say anything. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
and they shouldn't be. So yeah, I kind of got a sense of that in the book. I was like, she's there emotionally and physically. And the guys are like, hi.
Yeah. Yes. And like I said, I think it's a girl thing to just, run into that burning building.
Oh, absolutely. And you're there and you're present and it's so evident in the book. Again, thank you very much for being on the show this evening. And thanks to everybody in the chat for all the questions. They were some really good questions.
And if I feel like the world is lightening up a bit with the COVID thing. So maybe when that's all, because we've been doing everything, from home and via our computers and phones. So when it starts lightening up and maybe we'll do a book signing, I would love to do it. I've met the nicest people doing everything, and we text on Instagram, so we'll figure out how to get your book signed too.
That would be great. Well, I'm coming to California later this year, so maybe I'll take you out for lunch because you did the show and you're so sweet. Yeah, I would love to meet you in person. And then we'll get Jim Carrey in on it, and we'll start talking about the movie.
Exactly. Casting. We'll cast everybody at lunch.
We'll start working. Yeah, of course, Carol's going to play Carol because she won't.
Yeah, she can play her.
Maybe Vicky will play Harvey. Who knows? No, I'm just kidding.
She could do it. She could do anything, actually.
Thank you so much for being on the show. This has been
Thank you for having me. Thanks so much. So sweet.
And again, remember, take a look at that link in the show notes, everybody. Please get a copy. And I'll keep you guys, if you're following me on my social media, also follow Kelly on Instagram. Hers is also in the show notes. And if their book tour does happen, please sign up. Come on. Kelly wants to meet y'all.
Tammy, thank you so much.
Thank you. And have a wonderful weekend, everybody. Thank you again, Kelly.
I'll talk to you soon.
See ya.
Bye.